In time to talk a little baseball. Indians pitchers and catchers and likely a lot of young position players will report to Goodyear, Arizona in just a couple of days and get the 2019 season underway. The Indians did make some news today as they signed an outfielder, not the big sexy name, but a 10-year veteran in Matt Joyce. Joyce is a guy who has hit .240 during his 10-year career. Was an all-star back in 2011, battled through some back injuries last year with the Oakland A's, only 207 at-bats, hit .208, 7 home runs, 15 runs batted in. But the year before that, 2017, in almost 500 at-bats, he did hit 25 home runs, hit 68 runs batted in, hit .243, so right around his career average. Time to head back and bring in cleveland.com columnist Doug Lesmerises. Doug, what do you make of the Matt Joyce signing? Obviously, we've talked a lot about the Indians needing some outfielders. Not a sexy name, but a guy who's done it at the big league level, at least.
Yeah, you say not a sexy name, but at least he's a veteran. I say not good, but at least he's old and hurt. I don't know. I mean, if you lined up Jordan Luplow, Tyler Naquin, Brandon Geyer, Lonnie Chisenhall, and Matt Joyce and put them in a lineup and told Indians fans to pick, like, which of these guys are on your team right now, which aren't, who used to be here, and are any of these guys going to hit more than 4 home runs this year, I think we could have a game show for Indians fans. So I don't know. I mean, that's where they are. That's right. Where they are, and I get that. I get that it's Matt Joyce and it's not Bryce Harper. But they're just going to keep throwing names at the fire and hope that one of them hits. And I don't have a lot of faith that any of them are going to hit.
Well, you know, the question Indians fans are asking is, how did we get here? How did we get to where there's kind of a hole in the middle of the lineup? And the answer is the Indians went for it and in 2016, 17, 18, and traded away assets. Clint Frazier, Justice Sheffield, Francisco Mejia, and they released Jesus Aguilar. You give me Frazier, Mejia, and Aguilar, and I can plug the hole in the middle of that lineup pretty well, I think, or at least I feel a whole lot better about it. Now, they acquired Andrew Miller. That was for Frazier and Sheffield, and that really enabled them to make that run in 2016. And then Mejia brought them back Hand and Simber, and they need Hand to be the closer. So I guess in some form or fashion we should feel good because the front office went for it, didn't get it. But at least when they saw the opportunity, you know, they went for it. They went all in to try to get to a World Series championship. A World Series championship. They got to the World Series, Game 7 extra innings, all that. But that's why we're where we are.
Yeah, no issue with that. You'd much rather go for it than get through a window and get to the end and realize you never went for it. So you have to pay the piper in baseball, especially in a small market. You can't be good all the time. And I would much rather go for it and fall off a cliff than stay steady and never really take your shot. Now, the one thing that you showed in that graphic, that's a lot of bats they traded away for arms. And I understand they have payroll limitations now, but I wrote this last week for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer, and I got a lot of response from fans who agreed with it. I think now they need to trade an arm for some bats. They have a surplus of starting pitching, and given that they don't have really these young hitters to rely on, I think they need to make a deal with one of these starters to bring in a young bat or two to add to the middle of that lineup. So I'm in total agreement with what they did, that it was worth it, and that's why they're here now. But now I think you need to make the second adjustment because I think they can't afford for this pitching to be this good. Shane Bieber is ready to be more than a 5th starter in the majors. And so he can't be a 5th starter. He needs to be your 4th starter, and Clevenger needs to be your 3rd starter. And that's because you traded Bauer, or I think preferably Corey Kluber, to firm up this lineup. Because at the moment, you have 2 all-star candidates in Lindor and Ramirez, an okay guy in Santana, and a bunch of questions after that. I think you have to answer at least one of those questions in the lineup, and I think you have the pitching to be able to make a trade to do that.
I agree 100%. You know, it's kind of interesting. We're next week, you know, spring training begins. There's still over 100 free agents. So we came up with an all-nomad team. These guys are all unsigned, And there are a number of them that if you got to believe some of these guys are going to fall through the cracks, and somebody is going to sign a one-year deal, limited dollars, and that's what I think the Indians are looking for. And you should have some confidence that Chris Antonetti and these guys will find that guy. I don't think Matt Joyce is the guy. I need somebody I can plug into the middle of the lineup and feel pretty good that they're going to be able to drive in runs. Because if you can find one guy, then all of a sudden you can move Kipnis down further in the lineup, and you feel better about Jason Kipnis hitting 7th than you do 3rd or 5th or 2nd.
Yeah, and I do think we need to watch this shake out a little bit. And what we're saying right now about the Indians, and we're in agreement on that, isn't criticism yet. It's an acknowledgement that I just have a hard time believing that the roster they have right now is the roster they're going to take into the season in 6 weeks. I just find that hard to believe because it's so unbalanced and it doesn't make sense. But I do think there are teams out there that are in a little bit of a holding pattern, maybe because they're in on Machado or in on Harper or in on Dallas Keuchel, the starting pitcher, a couple different guys who are still out there. And all of a sudden, when some of those guys sign, the teams that then go to plan B may be open for business a little more. You get to spring training, your rotation, you realize has a couple holes in it. A guy gets hurt. A guy turns out that he stinks. And all of a sudden, you're even more interested in Corey Kluber than you were in the offseason. So I think there is absolutely a possibility that Antonetti and these guys are not done. But I add the caveat, they can't be done. So to your second point on that list, I think a guy like Marwin Gonzalez is an interesting name on that list. He has position versatility. He would certainly slot into the middle of this lineup. Adam Jones in the outfield is a guy that was a big name linked with the Indians at the deadline last year when they got Leonis Martin. Maybe they can get another guy or two on the cheap, but I think the best result is a deal that's out there, but you may need the free agency people to shake out before you can make that trade.
Doug Lesmerises, as always, great stuff. We appreciate it. Doug Lesmerises, cleveland.com columnist.